In the Frasier reboot, which took place 30 years later, Frasier truly foresaw his fate. In the Paramount Plus series, Kelsey Grammer plays his enduring role on the small screen as he goes back to Boston. After living in his homeland of Seattle for over 10 years and eventually moving to Chicago, this is his first trip returning to New England. The snooty psychiatrist in Frasier's fourth act embarks on a series of escapades as he attempts to make a fresh start in life. But this time, he won't have the support network of his family in the Pacific Northwest and his drinking companions from Cheers. The Good Father Frasier reboot pilot lays down the show's narrative framework. The revelation indicates that Frasier and Freddy had a falling out in the past few years because of the former's decision to drop out of Harvard, despite the fact that there was never any sign before of any hostility between them. The only child of Frasier and Lilith, as shown in the original series, inherited their brilliance, but Freddy chose to become a firefighter for the government. Frasier was on his way to Paris, so his stay in Boston was only planned to be temporary. But he stayed because he wanted to repair his relationship with his son. There is anticipation for Frasier's Boston apartment, as his Seattle apartment is still one of the most recognizable TV apartments. Driven by his desire to mend his relationship with Freddy, he purchases the entire apartment complex in which he resides. He practically forces his son to move in with him in the latter minutes of the Frasier reboot pilot, and Freddy eventually complies. However, as is to be expected, this leads to conflict between them in episode 2, Moving In. The fact that Frasier foresaw this happening some 30 years ago adds interest to his new living situation with Freddy in the reboot. The My Coffee with Niles episode from the first season of Frasier, which is the first year since Frasier returned to Seattle after years spent in Boston, is one of the best episodes of the show. The idea is straightforward. Niles asks the elder Crane if he is pleased after they have a conversation at Cafe Nervosa. In the course of the talk, Frasier openly shared his concerns about becoming his father's son in the future and moving in with him. Frasier's particular dread was not due to the fact that, unlike Martin, he too had experienced a mobility impairment. Rather, it was a result of his anxiety about not finding a lifelong partner. Frasier tried to move on from Lilith's traumatic adultery by dating frequently and staying socially active. But he never seems to be able to hold onto a relationship. Even while his relationship with Charlotte in the first season appeared to be working for a while, it ultimately terminated, putting him in the precise situation he has long been terrified of. Martin's absence is due to the passing of John Mahoney, while Niles and Daphne won't be in the Frasier reboot because Pearson leaves to decline the project. This is woven into the plot as Frasier travels to Seattle for his father's burial before departing for Boston. One of their issues in the pilot is Freddy's absence from the military. Martin is not physically present, but because of his grandchild, his presence is felt strongly. Just like Freddy, Frasier and Niles' father embodied the archetypal everyman. Though he won't truly take Martin's position, he will bridge the gap in the story that the Crane patriarch left behind. Martin and Frasier's complex father-son relationship was previously the subject of the franchise. The Frasier reboot, on the other hand, is changing the dynamic by having Frasier discover that he is the adult Freddy's parent. The character shares certain traits with his grandfather in addition to his occupation. Curiously, though, Freddy's view of his father in some ways also reflects Frasier's early viewpoint on his father when they were first beginning to heal their connection in the original series. It took Frasier's assistance to grasp this parallel at first, as Alan Cornwall and Nicholas Linter's novel had to do. Although Frasier's confrontation with Freddy in the Paramount Plus revival is similar to his first meeting with Martin upon his return to Seattle 30 years prior, fixing his present problem might be simpler. He will have the upper hand in trying to help them repair their damaged dynamic, because he is now the parental figure in the scenario. In addition to their differences, Martin's dislike of conversation was a major factor in the length of time it took them to get along. Each and every time Frasier tried to get in touch, the older Crane would either sidestep or flatly refuse him. New episodes of the Frasier reboot air on Paramount Plus every Thursday.